Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. To follow us on Instagram, go to No Name Music Cast Podcast. To send us an email, it's nonamemusiccast@gmail.com. And to visit our website, go to nonamemusiccast.com. Now, on with the show. Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And here at the top of the show on this Monday night, this night before a big snowstorm Monday night, we have some interesting cyber news, if you will.
That sounds cooler than it probably is, but we're on YouTube now.
Yay!
If you get your podcasts on YouTube. So me and Tim use a software that basically, it's not really software, an internet program that sends our podcasts out to multiple sources. So think like Apple Podcasts, whatever Google Podcast is now, so on and so forth, Spotify. And YouTube was a different setup. And to be completely honest with you, we had been lazy about it, and I finally did it this week. So if you prefer getting your podcast, and I noticed that YouTube does have a podcast like tab. It is on there. You just search No Name Music Cast, will come right up.
Absolutely. And if you've got like a smart TV or something like that and you don't have a podcast separate thing on there, you can search as No Name Music Cast and that's going to come up and all of our episodes are there. And as they post to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that kind of stuff, they will populate up onto YouTube as well.
Yes, the lovely side of the RSS feed is that it does it for us. Once Tim pushes the button, then it'll automatically go up on YouTube.
Absolutely. And some other news we now have an official website, which is nonamemusiccast.com. It's really mostly a reflection of all of our episodes and some other information, but it's good to have that up there on the internet. The other thing is we came off Facebook because we wasn't getting a lot of traction on there, but we've continued to get reasonable views and traction on Instagram. So we now are going to be developing our Instagram account. So if you haven't followed us on Instagram, please do. It's No Name Music Cast Podcast on Instagram, and you'll be able to find us on there. We're going to try and post some interesting stuff about our episodes, some other music facts, and anything else that we fancy, really.
And I mean, if you have some ideas that you'd like us to do on our Instagram, or if you have some episodes, you could always DM us on there. So there's like a direct message. Me and Tim could either of us might see it. And, you know, just a thought if you have some ideas swirling out there for us.
Absolutely. And if you didn't want to DM us on Instagram, we also now have a new email address, nonamemusiccast@gmail.com.
It's true. We do. We probably should have did this a while ago.
Yeah, Joe and I were discussing it, and it's like, well, we should have probably done this 5 years ago. But anyhow, there's no time like the present. 5 years?
That's what's crazy.
Yeah, no time like the present. So we're fully embracing the internet age, even though we effectively do a radio show that only distributes on the internet.
The irony of it all. All right. Did you have any music news you wanted to talk about, Tim?
Yeah, I've got one piece of music news. So this is Black Sabbath. So Black Sabbath are doing what is supposed to be their final ever gig ever. Now, they did a farewell tour a few years ago, and that was, everyone assumed that was the final gig. But no, they are doing the final gig. Now, the difference with this is it is the classic Black Sabbath lineup. Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi, Ozzy Osbourne, but it's including Bill Ward on the drums. Now, when they did that tour a few years ago, which was their sort of farewell tour, they couldn't get Bill Ward involved for contractual reasons. Tony Iommi owns the name Black Sabbath, and I think all the other people at this point are employees of Black Sabbath, including Ozzy, I think. But no, they managed to secure Bill Ward. Now, I've seen footage of Ozzy recently, and he's very much older, and he doesn't appear to be in great shape. So quite how he's going to perform a Black Sabbath set, I don't know. I assume he's going to be sitting down. I really don't know.
I mean, I guess we'll have to find out.
Absolutely. But the interesting thing is they're going to be performing in Birmingham, in Villa Park, Birmingham, which is where Black Sabbath is from.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, oh, they're very, very famously a Birmingham band. I mean, they basically invented heavy metal and they invented it in Birmingham in England.
Now that's the irony. I mean, I knew they were from England, but I don't think I knew where specifically.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're from Villa Park in Birmingham. All the profits from this concert are going to be donated to charities. They're Parkinson's charity, Birmingham Children's Hospital, other children's hospice. They're not going to make any money out of this. It's purely just a charity endeavor. But the lineup is amazing. I don't know if you've seen the lineup for this concert.
I have not.
So the headliners, of course, is Black Sabbath, featuring Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne is also going to do some solo stuff, and he's going to have some of the guitar players that he used to play with. He's going to have Zakk Wylde there. Metallica is going to be on that bill. Slayer, Pantera, Alice in Chains, Hailstorm, Lamb of God, Anthrax, Mastodon are going to be there. And on top of that, you're going to have special performances from Billy Corgan, Duff McKagan and Slash from Guns N' Roses, Jake E. Lewis, and that's one of Ozzy's previous guitar players, Lizzie Hale, KK Dowding, he's going to be there. Sammy Hagar, the Red Rocker's going to be there.
They brought in the whole kit caboodle there, Tim. That's a lot of people.
Van Halen and Tom Morello of Audio Slave and Rage Against the Machine fame. He is, as well as performing, he is the musical director for the whole thing.
So that's a really long and extensive lineup of and we haven't seen a lot of those people perform in a while. Do we have any idea what those tickets are going to cost people, Tim? I know it's going for a good cost, but
I looked it up. The high end are about £600, and at the low end they're about 150. So I mean, pricey, but I mean, for the magnitude of this concert, it doesn't seem unreasonable.
No, consider you just named how many bands. $150 is chunk change when you think about when I bought, I don't know, Elton John tickets. It was $70 for one person, right, Tim, to perform, but I was all the way in the nosebleeds.
Yeah,
so it's not bad.
I mean, this is in a football stadium, and it's on Saturday, July the 5th of this year. So I'm assuming it's going to be live streamed or recorded or YouTubed or something along those sort of lines. I mean, I'm assuming Ozzy's set is not going to be good.
No, that's fair. He's not in great health, though. If you've seen him recently, Tim, it is pretty bad.
Yeah, no, he's not in good shape. That's why I'm surprised that he's able to perform to do this. But by the same token, this is going to be a fantastic event. All of the money is going to great charities. And if you go along to that concert, you're going to see such an amazing metal lineup, an unbelievable metal lineup. Yeah,
that I haven't heard a lineup like that, Tim, in years. That's a lot of bands in one. And I would pay $150 easily, or pounds in this case, probably more like 200, USD or something along those lines. I would totally pay that.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So as we get closer, I think they'll probably even be announcing different people. But I mean, I said Metallica, Sabbath, Slayer. I mean, Pantera. It's just unbelievable.
Well, there you go. That sounds like a really good concert.
There we are. Well, that's the big news of the week. That's the only music news I have.
All right. Well, I'm going to talk about the Grammys. And full transparency, this is the first year I've watched the full Grammys from beginning to end, Tim. And I will say I was pleasantly surprised. Now, there's a couple of things that stood out. There's two reasons I watched it. One, because Molly came over to my house and she really wanted to watch it, so I turned it on. But two, because they were doing the Quincy Jones tribute. And I knew that was coming to the Grammys this year. It was being headlined by Stevie Wonder. So I was like, okay, that's going to be fantastic, right? And then they also had quite a few other artists that were on the bill for the Quincy Jones. And then what stood out, though, I'll get into that a little bit more. I'll go down that kind of list. But what stood out to me was whether you like them or not, all the winners were women. I think one guy won Kendrick Lamar, the one who was in the Super Bowl halftime show, won something in hip hop, but I'm not familiar with his music, to be honest with you. I've heard it, but it's not something I seek out. Not to insult him, that's just the truth. But I thought it was really cool. And maybe this is just just me being a woman, and so it interests me. But I was shocked. All the performances were by women. All the people winning were women. One of the big upsets of the night was I don't know if it was an upset per se, but what was interesting was, for those who don't know, Beyonce did a country album, Cowboy Carter, Maybe Cowboy Carter 2. I don't know what it is, but something like that. And when they did the CMA Awards, though the album was received well, was getting good radio hits, people were liking it, so on and so forth, she didn't win anything at the CMT Awards. And there was some backlash about it being a snub because it was like she wasn't part of the country in crowd. You know, she's a pop artist coming into this and blah, blah. And so she won for Best Country Artist. And I think she may be like the first African-American woman to ever win that. So that was kind of cool. I do know that whoever won, the female who won the hip hop artist or R&B artist or whatever it is, she was like only the third African-American woman to win it. But when I say, even if you don't care about Beyonce, when I say she was struck, she was dumbfounded when they called her name, Tim. I don't think for a second she thought that was going to happen. And I don't mean that like it was, you know, you can tell when someone's faking it, and when they really look dumbfounded, she looked dumbfounded. Yeah. And she was probably like, I'm going to get so much backlash. That's probably what she was thinking. She did a really nice speech. She basically just said, I know this is a genre I'm not normally in. And, you know, there was some hard feelings about that. She goes, but I just find genre to be boxes. And to give her some credit, she is from Texas. Like, she's from Houston, Texas. That's her roots. She likes country music. She just wanted to do something different. But anyway, so that stood out to me. Now, the Quincy Jones tribute was really good. So it was a very star-studded ensemble. They even had, so for those who don't know, Will Smith was the presenter during the Quincy Jones tribute, like talking, the host, I guess, whatever you want to call it. In The Fresh Prince, that was produced by Quincy Jones. Fresh Prince, the TV show, was produced by Quincy Jones.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so Will Smith was a really good choice. And he talked about one thing that stood out to him, and he still remembers it to this day, was there was something going on when Will was recording a scene and he got called out and said, hey, Quincy Jones wants to see you now. And he's like, now? What do you mean now? And basically Quincy Jones put him to the ringer because he said the food that he was feeding his crew was just not acceptable. He was like, this is not acceptable. You have all these people working for you for your dream, and you're going to feed them that. And he's like, well, you know, it's not in the budget. And Quincy goes, well, you better open your wallet. And that became a thing. And I think Will Smith ended up paying for the food himself to like make up for the fact that what was there was not great. And he said that that's just like one of the little things that stood out to him about like his character as Quincy Jones as a person. Yeah. And me and Tim have talked about, you know, treating your crew correctly. So that was a big one. And then it opened with a performance. So one thing that people don't know is that Quincy Jones did the arrangement for Frank Sinatra for Fly Me to the Moon. So it was the first thing that they did was they had, what is his name, Tim? Herbie Hancock on the piano. And Cynthia Erivo, who is in Wicked, she's a Broadway star, could sing the phone book, has like Aretha Franklin type vocals, right, Tim? Like great singer. Whether you like her personally or not, she can sing anything. And her arrangement was so good. It was beautiful. It was a piano. She killed it, just everything spot on. But then, and I don't know why, I think whoever put this arrangement together must hate Lainey Wilson, because I couldn't tell you a song Lainey Wilson does. I don't know anything about this person, but she was on right after Cynthia. And it was a travesty. Like, it was not, okay, let me restate this. It was good, decent, but to go from that to that, and then when I tell you what happens next, whoever sandwiched her in there must really not like her. Because, and I can't even remember, what did it say she did a version of? Hang on. It was some kind of like pop song, but I can't remember what she did. Oh, Let the Good Times Roll. So she kind of like did like, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And it just, man. So then they skip back from her, and I think they go to either Cynthia sings a little bit more, and then they go to Stevie Wonder with Herbie Hancock on stage, and they did a wonderful, Stevie did a whole song with just him and Herbie on the piano, and he was doing the harmonica. It was great, beautiful, amazing arrangement. And then they went into, as I told Tim, We Are the World. So they did a We Are the World. And the reason they did this was because, one, I think that there was some things Stevie was trying to say, but two, because of the fire relief. So a lot of the Grammys, all the money that they made, they had like QR codes you could donate to fire relief in California, which was some people didn't like that a bunch of celebrities were telling people, regular people, to donate. I don't care. Everybody donate. Do what's good for the world. It doesn't matter. But Stevie brought on, so Tim was like, well, who sang, the backup parts? And I said, it was high school choirs whose schools had burned down in the fire.
Yeah, I remember you said that because I was interested in how they were going to do it because, of course, the original track is legendary and the ensemble sort of behind them singing those backups in the original was like everyone that you could ever imagine. And I was curious how they were going to reproduce that.
Well, I thought that was beautiful. Great tribute. And to be honest, I know maybe they did pick some of the students who were better singers, maybe. Sounded really good, Tim. Whoever did the arrangement with the choir knew how to set up a choir properly, and it gave a great wall of sound. It was all beautiful. They did a great job honoring Quincy Jones. Then they went into, and whether you know her or not, Janelle Monáe is a wonderful artist. She kind of stays under the radar, and I think the reason she stays under the radar, Tim, is she's not like your classic what's popular on the radio type person right now. She did a song a while back that I really liked that reminded me of Prince. So she did a tribute to, she did Michael Jackson. And what song did she do? Hold on. I can't remember if she did Billie Jean or... Yeah, I think she did Billie Jean. Oh, no, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. That's what it was. And she had a I Heart Quincy Jones t-shirt. It was very cute. And I mean, she went hard. She can dance. So there was a lot of dancing. There was a lot of like very Michael Jackson. She did like all the choreography. It was really good too. And, Quincy Jones and Michael go hand in hand. So it made sense. That's how they ended it. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now, after that, they did they highlighted all the artists who had passed away and producers and, over the years. And I will say I was disappointed in that because Chris Martin came on stage and it was all very boring after this height of Quincy Jones. And then you've got Chris Martin on the piano and it just, I don't know. They probably should have did that first.
What did he perform?
It was just some really Coldplay sounding song that I've never heard. I don't know. It was like there was like a orchestra. There was like somebody there with like a standing cello and like all those kind of things, harp, whatever. And he was on the piano and he was singing. And I've never heard this song before. I don't know what it is, but it just sounded like Coldplay.
As we said, Coldplay is like U2 with the guitars taken out.
And then they had like all the people who passed away on the screen, big screen, honoring them behind them as they were playing the song. And maybe this is some really famous song that someone out there screaming at me, but I don't know it. And I did not like this whole section because coming off of all that excitement around Stevie Wonder, We Are the World, and then the whole Janelle Monáe did a great job with Michael, and it was very high energy, right, Tim? And then you just go to that. It just felt wrong. They should have put that first.
Yeah, as they say, the pacing was off.
But overall, I know they raised, might even be in the billions. It was a lot of money. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it for what it's worth, which doesn't happen because most Grammys are pretty boring.
See, I still struggle with the Grammys because I think anyone who's listed in there is not worthy. It should go to someone like Aretha Franklin. So that's I struggle with that.
I will say, yes, I know what Tim's saying. And that is hard. To be fair, though, Cynthia Erivo from Wicked is like Aretha Franklin. She didn't win anything, but her vocals were like top notch. And if you haven't heard her version of Fly Me to the Moon, it was beautiful. And it just goes to show there were some little interesting pieces that I don't think the general audience knows, like the Fresh Prince fact, or the fact that Quincy Jones did do Frank Sinatra's arrangements and different things like that. Mm-hmm. So there you go, guys. Even if you don't want to watch the whole Grammys, just go on YouTube and look up the Quincy Jones bit, and you will not be disappointed, besides maybe that one little part that I won't bring up because I feel bad saying it, but they must not like her, because why did they put her there? I don't know.
I mean, whoever produced it or staged the show, I mean, someone made a decision with that, but I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, I think it was trying to cover a lot of Like, you know what I mean? Give a lot of different artists and different genres and different things. Because you got Cynthia Reo, who's like a Broadway star. Then we've got her in country music. Then we got Stevie Wonder. You know what I mean, Tim? Then you got like I said, Janelle Monáe's a little bit more underground, but she does have a great voice and she can dance. So I think that they were just trying to cover a lot of, people that people like. And maybe, I don't know, maybe this person that I didn't care for, whatever her name was, Lainey Wilson, maybe she's a huge Quincy Jones fan and I don't know it.
I mean, it could be. You don't know how these rock and roll connections come together.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know anyone who isn't a Quincy Jones fan, so can you be in music and not at least respect Quincy Jones? I feel like the answer is no.
I mean, his orchestral work, even before he got into the pop realm, and then, of course, his work with Michael Jackson is absolutely legendary.
Exactly. So anyway, that is my little bit of music news. I didn't really want to talk about any of the winners because, to be honest, I do have to tell you one joke, though, Tim. There was the funniest thing happened, and I do not mean this to insult this song. I've never heard this song a day in my life. Wouldn't know it if my life depended on it. A lot of people love this artist. I don't know. But there was a song that was called, so we were watching it, and I looked at Molly and I went, did they just say that song is Alligator Bites Don't Heal? That was the name of the song. And so we were cracking up about that. And just as they do, the screen pans to Jaden Smith, Will Smith's son. And he had, and everybody else was just wonderfully, like very Grammys, like the clothing was great. But he had a house on his head.
I saw a picture of this and I wondered what that was all about.
And apparently it was Minecraft. It was to honor some game. I don't know, Tim. But between the fact that I just learned that a song called Alligator Bites Don't Heal was winning a Grammy, and then I just see this, I looked at Molly and went, what in the Lady Gaga is that? And Molly busted up laughing. We have been joking about it for the comedic timing was just perfect. I don't know why it caught me so off guard, because I was still reveling in the fact that Alligator Bites Don't Heal was the song that just won a Grammy, and now we've got Jada Smith wearing a house on his head.
I mean, do you know what's the name of a great song? You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman. That is a great song, and that should be winning a Grammy.
I mean, I'm not insulting the song. I've never heard it before, Tim. I can't tell you a thing about it, but it really did throw me off guard. I don't know why that was so funny in the moment. And if you guys haven't seen Jaden Smith's house on his head, please go look at it. It's hilarious. I mean, he may have done it with all the best intentions. I have nothing against Jaden Smith. It just cracked me up. I also find it funny. Did you know he did a water brand? He made water, like his own water, and he put it in biodegradable, because he was against the use of plastic or whatever. There was good intentions there. But do you know what the name of the water brand was?
What's that?
Just Water.
Well, I mean, there's 1,000 different water brands out there. I mean, what else are you going to call it?
I don't know why, but that just cracked me up. All right, so on to the topic, because we've spent enough time in the Grammys. So I was trying to think of something a little bit different. I have talked. Now I'm gonna put, and Tim, you may want to put little notes in the section, so you might want to write this down. This episode will talk about people who are dead now and talk about people who are missing and things of that nature. So if that bothers you, if that is not something you want to talk about, we will not go into detail about any of that. This is more just like conspiracy theories and just fun stuff, because we haven't done one of these episodes in a while. Okay. And I enjoy them. And I tried to find stuff that was a little bit different than what we've talked about before. So I have it really in 3 sections that I will explain as we go. But the first section is basically just artists who vanished without a trace. So the first one is Richie Edwards from the Manic Street Preachers. Are you familiar with this band, Tim?
Yes, absolutely. They were more or less a British phenomenon. I don't think they did a great deal in this country, but certainly their songs were very strong. I mean, it seems to me their career really blossomed after Richie disappeared. And I think the big song you may know of those is Designed for Life.
Yes. Now, the song I picked was I didn't pick that song. I only know 2 songs from them, Tim. I picked Faster because that's when he was still in the band. So I thought that was you know what I mean? Kind of to honor him. But basically, for those who don't know, he disappeared on February 1st, 1995. And it's weird because it was the same day the band was set to tour in the US. And so because they didn't get to tour in the US, I think that might be part of the reason why it never really, you know what I mean, Tim? It never really stuck here. But basically, it says his car was found abandoned near, I'm assuming this is in the UK, Severn Bridge, Severn Bridge?
Seven.
Okay, what Tim said, which was a well-known spot for people who were trying to take their life, but nobody was ever found. Some believe he took his own life. Some believe he faked his own death and started over, and he's working with Elvis and Tupac somewhere. But the irony is I picked Faster because I thought it kind of tied in. It's about self-destruction, paranoia, and some people say it could sound like a goodbye note.
I mean, it could be. I mean, the Severn Bridge is a huge bridge, and like you say, it's a place where people have been known to take their own life. I mean, if he did take his own life there, I mean, it might be very tricky to find his body after the fact. But yeah, this is something in the realm of rock music that often comes up, that Richie disappeared and he was never found.
Yeah. So there you go. Now we're going to talk about another artist. This is a 1950s folk singer. I have heard this name, but I'm going to be honest with you, I wouldn't know what to pick out. But I just thought the story was kind of interesting. Her name is Connie Converse, and that's a great name, by the way. I don't know if that's her real name, but Connie Converse is kind of a cool name. And it's Talking Like You is the name of the song. In this song, it's very hauntingly, lonely, sad. That's why I picked it, because it ties in. But basically what happened was in 1974, she had decided she was done with music. She was like, I hate it. I don't want to be in the limelight. She wrote a goodbye note to her friends, and then she just vanished. Wow. No one knows what ever happened to her again.
I mean, she could have moved abroad. She could have gone north. She could have gone south. Who can say?
Super interesting to me, because one thing about when people vanish is technically you're allowed to vanish. If you want to vanish, you can.
Yeah, you're not obliged to. I mean, if you wanted to walk out your house one day and say, well, I'm going to go to Peru and I'm not going to tell anyone, you can do that.
That's what I think is so interesting. Now, if you've got friends and family and maybe you have kids that you left behind, obviously that opens a whole different door. She was super known in New York. I think she was part of kind of like a limelight. So when she disappeared, it was very weird. Also, her brother, whose name is Philip Converse, he was a political scientist. And so there's some conspiracy theories that maybe he is the reason that she disappeared. I don't know. But I did kind of go down a little bit of a rabbit hole. So she lived in the Flatiron District, and then she also lived in Greenwich Village, which at that time was, I think, Hell's Kitchen in Harlem. And so she kind of grew up in New York, was known in the music scene, got her breakthrough, and then just decided, I'm done, and she was gone.
Interesting.
There you go, everybody.
Yeah, I'm assuming that she was part of the Shoe Fortunes.
Yes, obviously with Converse, Tim. She was really into basketball. But that's her real last name. It's Converse.
There we are.
Now, her real legal name is Elizabeth Eaton Converse. She started calling herself Connie. I don't know why.
Because it rhymes and it sounds cool. Connie Converse.
It does. It's kind of like Alicia Keys. Whereas I make the joke all the time. I want to be Johnny Guitar. All right. So this one's super interesting. This artist is known from the 1960s. He had a full album that came out, and he did disappear. His name is Jim Sullivan. He had a song called UFO. And in 1975, he drove into the New Mexico desert and was never seen again. They found his car, his belongings, but no sign of him. The interesting thing, though, is the song is named UFO, Tim, and what happened in New Mexico?
Well, it was Roswell, of course.
Exactly. So that's the irony. What they're saying is that's why people find this one so weird. Is his car was found in New Mexico after he had a song that came out about a UFO.
Now, I'm not familiar with this Jim Sullivan. There is a famous British session guitar player called Big Jim Sullivan, and maybe he was called Big Jim Sullivan to differentiate himself from that Jim Sullivan. I mean, we lost Big Jim Sullivan a few years ago. He was the guy who plays the little lead guitar break on Tom Jones's It's Not Unusual. And, all through the 60s and 70s, he played on all kinds of stuff, unbelievable amount of stuff. But when you said Jim Sullivan, I thought, what, the big Jim Sullivan, the session guitar player?
No, they just happen to have the same name. But that is a good call out because that it could be confusing for people listening. So good for you for mentioning that, Tim. I just thought it was super interesting because of the UFO reference. And that song got like mildly popular. And then he just, and I don't know if he's from New Mexico, like why he was in New Mexico, but he was super into the whole album was about supernatural, extraterrestrial topics. So maybe he was in New Mexico because he enjoyed that kind of thing. Maybe he's super into Roswell. I don't know. Got
He
no
could
clue.
be, or maybe he was waiting to pick up a ride from a spaceship, and maybe New Mexico is the spaceport. Who can say?
I mean, to be fair, it's very possible. So if you're super into UFOs and Roswell, go look up Jim Sullivan, not to be confused with Big Jim Sullivan that Tim just pointed out. All right, so this is another one from the 1940s. We're really on the modern day music with this episode, Tim.
Oh, I
Just
tell you,
forget- oh.
we're talking about the Grammys, the 40s. I mean, we're completely up to date.
Now, Tim probably knows this one because it involves the English Channel, and I imagine maybe you guys have heard this, maybe not. I don't know. I'm in America, and I never heard of Jim Sullivan, so who knows? But Glenn Miller is the name of the person. He was a big band leader, and famous for like that World War II era swing music. But in 1944, he boarded a flight over the English Channel that disappeared mid-flight.
Wow. I mean, Glenn Miller, yeah, he famously had that song "In the Mood."
That was my song choice.
Yeah,
It's the only song I know from him.
He was, as I said, a leader of a lot of that big band music of that kind of era. But "In the Mood" is the one that you would probably recognize. And in fact, do you ever hear any of those mega mixes by Jive Bunny and the Master Mixers?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that the main theme of that is Glenn Miller's "In the Mood." I didn't realize he disappeared above the English Channel. Now, the English Channel is 35 miles or something, but sort of from coast to coast. It's not far.
No, it says that there's theories his plane crashed and they never found him. Maybe he was caught under some type of friendly fire. Some people have said he's on some secret World War II mission. I don't know. But yeah, and it's kind of like, we hear a lot about planes that just disappear. I'm like, why have we never heard of this one?
I'm very familiar with Glenn Miller, but I'd never heard that story before. I mean, what didn't he have an air tag in his luggage?
I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. we didn't have the conversation before he got on the plane in case his luggage didn't come home with it. But he was an Army. So what's interesting is he was an officer in the U.S. Air Force. So that kind of plays into the lore behind him, like, disappearing and blah, blah, blah. Now, whether that's true or not, I mean, I don't know that he disappeared. He very well, plane could have crashed and they never found him. I mean, I don't know how easy it is to find a plane crash in the English Channel.
Well, with any aviation crash over a body of water, especially an ocean, it is incredibly hard because all that stuff is going to sink to the bottom. It's going to break up on impact. I mean, this was probably an era before black box flight recorders and transponders and all the stuff that modern aircraft have. So, I mean, when did this happen?
1944.
Yeah, it's way before. I mean, they had radio, but way before any of that. And even like radar would have probably been in its infancy at that point. It would be very just tricky to track it down. I mean, even now, there are flights that have gone missing in the last 10 years or so that they've never been able to recover anything because it's just in such a huge body of water and the water is so deep, it's just impossible to find them.
I mean, that makes sense. And supposedly our government says there are aliens in the water now, Tim. So who knows?
Well, they're right. Did you see that thing about there's one of these deep sea fishes that's never ever been seen before?
Yes.
Yeah, or one that's alive. They've seen dead ones that's washed up, but they've never seen one that's alive, sort of within,
Terrifying.
Yeah.
The idea of the actual vast ocean is terrifying, Tim. Like, just if you think about because I mean, and the one that trips me out is when you think about, like the oil rigs and stuff where they have to go all the way to the bottom and put those things in. And that in and of itself seems like a crazy feat that we can do that. But yeah, the ocean does scare me. I'm not going to lie. I love being in it. I grew up in it. I was born in Florida. My family, we're big into swimming and stuff like that. But going out to deep sea is not something I really want to do.
Yeah, I think scientists know more about the universe and us and our solar
Hmm.
system and stuff that sits sort of within the vicinity of the Earth more than they do about what's happening in the bottom of the oceans.
Yep. So the crazy part about this, though, Tim, is that I was going to say this is he was originally supposed to be on standby for an earlier flight 2 days before. So this happened on December 15th. He was on standby for an earlier flight on the 13th, but was canceled due to bad weather. So
No.
maybe there was some type of omen around the whole plane to begin with. I don't know. You guys can go down the rabbit hole. There's a lot of stuff about different people who've done things and, different theories and whatever. Now, they did give him a memorial headstone. He has, a tablet of missing people. They finally put one up for him and he has like a little memorial tree and stuff. There was a lot of investigations, but nothing has ever been concrete.
There we are. And when Mr. Miller lived out his life, who knows where.
Yes. All right. So the next one is his name is Robert Johnson.
Hmm.
And he is known for the song. Well, the song that I know from him was Crossroad Blues. It is very eerie, mythical song. Now, he is famously known to have sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads. Have you heard this story, Tim? I'm sure you have.
100%. This is the legendary blues guitarist Robert Johnson.
Hmm.
He wrote and recorded probably the where all modern blues
Yep.
music comes from, and his music has been covered by the Rolling Stones, by Eric Clapton, Joe Bonamassa. You name it, everyone has
Everyone.
covered a Robert Johnson song, and the recordings that exist of him. Have pretty much come from a wax cylinder or something very primitive
Hmm.
like that. And the recordings that you hear, his voice is very high pitched, and people have been doing some research, and they think that the actual playback when it was mastered was done at the wrong speed. And there's some YouTube videos where
Yep.
people have slowed it down, and it sounds a lot more like a normal person singing. But yeah, he is a legendary figure in the world of guitar, and especially the world of blues guitar. And as you said, famously, supposedly went down to the crossroads, sold his soul to the devil, and in exchange, he got this blues music, this legendary blues music that is still being played today.
And he is known as like the king of the Delta blues. That's like his little nomenclature, I guess would be the
Hmm.
term for it. And so a lot of people speak about him and say, even like people from like Amy Winehouse and Jim Morrison and everybody in between speaks of him as like a very big influence. There was even like the TV show with Supernatural did a whole episode on him. So he's pretty known. And I think Tim McGraw even did a song about him at one point. Now, what's super interesting about this, though, so this isn't really a missing person, but I just put him in this category because there's some lore that maybe the devil took him or something. I don't know. But he did die mysteriously in 1938 at the age of 27. So he is famously part of the Forever 27 Club. And he was poisoned, but they don't know by who.
Yeah, everything about him is very eerie. Now, of course, back then you didn't have the news, you didn't have the internet
Yeah.
like you do now, so there was probably a lot of lore that
And
was
testing
around.
for poison probably wasn't what it is today.
Yeah, and you could probably get away with things back then, but yeah, he's a legendary figure. Now, of course, there was the film Crossroads, which
Yeah, I
has the
forgot that
guy,
one.
was it Ralph Macchio, the guy who's in the Karate Kid, is in it?
I think so,
and
yeah.
that loosely follows the story of Robert Johnson. And the best part of that film is the guitar duel at the end with Ralph Macchio and Steve Vai, who's playing like the devil type character.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and most guitarists have seen that film the sum total of once, but they've seen the guitar battle at the end 5,200 times.
I can agree with that. I've seen that on YouTube a few times, but I don't know that I've ever actually watched the whole movie. But I know what you're talking about. And he's just brought up a lot in general. Like the lore around him is super interesting. Now, one of the theories was he was poisoned. They did determine he was poisoned by a jealous husband. That's one theory that seems to stick, and the one that seems to, like most people quote, that maybe a jealous husband was upset with him for some things he did. Believe it or not.
Well, they were simpler times back then, were maybe not as moralistic. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Well, I mean, Anyway, so that was the first section. Now, the next one we're going to go to is more like suspicious deaths and murders. Dun dun dun. Because there's only so many people who vanish. So I had to move on to something else. Now, me and Tim have talked about this person. Tim will be familiar with this, and he probably is familiar with this story. This is Bobby Fuller, and he famously did "I Fought the Law" before the Clash.
Yep.
Wrote it, played it, so on and so forth. Now, what was interesting is in 1966 he was found dead in his car. They ruled it a suicide, but the evidence now has been reevaluated, and they said he was covered in bruises and gasoline. So they think that he was actually murdered.
Yeah. Where did that take place? Did that take place in this country or?
Let's see, because I didn't write that down, but I'll find out in a second. I'm thinking it was in America because he is an American, but I don't know where his place of death was. They found his vehicle outside his Hollywood apartment, so it was in LA.
California.
Yes. They said he was, at the time, they said that there was no bruises, no broken bones, no cuts. But then later people have went back and, they fought that and stuff like that. And there is a theory because he wrote a song about fighting the law. Maybe the law didn't like him. I don't know. But there was also there's another theory that he was somehow connected to the mafia. So he was buried in the Hollywood Hills, and he had a very big segment one time. I think it was like a 3-parter on unsolved mysteries where they went through all of this. Now, the original person who did it says that they didn't find any of that. A fellow medical examiner has said that that's not true. Blah 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 blah. I don't know. It was a different time then. I don't know how accurate medical records were, but supposedly they did a full autopsy. The autopsy doesn't match what the medical examiner said. That kind of thing.
Maybe it was because he fought the law, and the law in the end did win.
I guess we'll never know. Bobby Fuller, if you're listening out there, you can come tell us. I mean, we might be a little creeped out about it, but it would be interesting. Now, he is kind of known, for those who don't know, of kind of having a style similar to Buddy Holly, I guess, and that kind of 4-man situation, often using the same type of material. That's what I would associate him close to.
There we are. Yeah.
Anyway, so Bobby Fuller. Not to be confused with the guy who did the song The Monster Mash, which at first, what is the guy who did the Monster Mash, Tim? What's his name? Bobby
Pickett and the Crypt Kickers.
I thought when I first saw this, I was reading about Bobby Pickett until I saw the I Fought the Law. And I was like, the guy from the Monster Mash?
I was working in the lab late one night.
I have no idea why I thought that. But anyway, all right. So we're going to go into someone from The Temptations. We've all heard the band The Temptations.
Yep.
This is Paul Williams. So he was shot in 1973. It was ruled a suicide, but dun, 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 people don't believe that. Here we go again. So supposedly the reason they don't believe that happened, Tim, is there were no fingerprints on the gun that they said he used. And he wasn't wearing gloves or anything obvious that, would dispute that. It does seem a little perplexing if it was a suicide, how there were no fingerprints on the gun.
Well, I mean, the Temptations always dress very fancy on stage. Maybe he was wearing gloves.
But they didn't find him in gloves. Did he take the gloves off after he died, Tim?
I mean, that's what makes it complicated, shall we say.
Fair enough. The song I picked was Don't Look Back, and obviously it was just an eerie title, so that's why I went with it. There's 1,000 Temptation songs I could have went with. Now, many suspect that he was murdered, as I just stated, and the reason is a possible dispute with Motown.
Oh.
Now, I didn't go too far down that road because there's 1,000 theories, but one of them was that there's something money dispute in his contract with Motown, and so they think that could be a factor.
Who knew that Motown was run by the mob, effectively?
Well, if me and Tim are missing tomorrow, it's because of this episode, everybody, which you guys won't hear for 2 weeks, so we're goners, Tim. Wait, probably more than 2 weeks. I don't know when they'll hear this episode. Oh, that's funny. All right. So I am going to skip that one because I don't know how to say that guy's name. So anyway, this one is Alan Jackson Jr.
Okay.
And the song is Green Onions. Now, I'm not super familiar with this, but I guess he's somehow associated with Booker T. I don't know. It's an older 1930s kind of what we're talking about. I'm not super familiar with him as a person, but I think he was the drummer for Booker T.
Yeah,
Yes.
Booker T and the MGs, which was the Stax house band.
Yes.
And they played on all manner of Stax recordings and famously had the song Green Onions as a hit. Now, the song Green Onions was just a studio jam. It was something they used to jam when they were warming up. And it didn't even really have that much of a title. It was just like a vamp they used to work around. And at the very end of a session, they had some tape left over. Back in the days when you had tape on your tape machine, your Ampex tape machine, they said, you know what, that vamp song, that jam that we do, let's record that and see what that sounds like. We've got 4 minutes of tape left, so hit record and let's play it. What you hear is the first take, and there was no edits or anything like that on it. And there we are. Booker T and the MGs became a big stars with their Green Onions.
And so, I mean, I've heard of Booker T and the MGs. I've heard of the song Green Onion, but I wasn't super familiar with Alan Jackson Jr., but he is apparently the drummer. Now, what's crazy, though, is on October 1st, 1975, at the age of 39, his remains were found. And it's one of those ones that was very mysterious. Earlier in 1975, there had been reports that he had been held at gunpoint by his wife 4 years earlier. She had shot him once before, and he lived. So, man, I've been through a lot.
I mean, wouldn't you leave the marital home at that point? Wouldn't you say, sorry, Doris, I'm done. Thank you. I'm heading out now.
Yeah, generally, if anyone shoots me, I'm out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's kind of a rule of thumb for most people. Now, we're not saying like she flicked him in the arm and it hurt. We're saying she shot him. So.
Yeah, I mean that really is your indication to leave. If you know, I mean, I wouldn't be hanging around after that.
So then he recovered, went on a full tour. Poor man, got and then did a full recording, went back to life. I guess he's still with the wife. I don't know. On the night of his murder, though, he came home from a James Brown concert, which I find random, and was confronted by an intruder. He was forced to lay face down and was shot in the back.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Now, of course, with the fact that his wife had already shot him once, she was looked at very heavily as a factor in this. So what they're saying is there's some theories that obviously there was a setup of an invasion home gone wrong. His wife, Barbara Jackson, claimed to be side up by the intruders while he was being killed, but she was there. And the rumors are that Barbara had a boyfriend on the side. His name was Will. Now, this is all allegedly. Don't come for us, internet. I don't know if William Turner's still alive, but if you are William Turner, I'm saying allegedly so I don't get sued, was involved in the murder. And it turned out later, oh, wait, I guess he is dead, so I guess it doesn't matter. He was killed in a shootout with the police, so he's gone. So there you go. It's a lot of stuff, though, to happen to one person in a very short amount of time.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'm just wrong, but I don't know. All right. So the next one we're going to go to is an artist called Johnny Ace. He had a song called Pledging My Love, which was a very heartbreaking ballad. When I listened to it, I wasn't super familiar with it. Now, the theory is that it was on Christmas in 1954. He died playing Russian roulette.
Yeah, as they would say in the UK, that is a mug's game.
What does that mean?
Well, if you're a mug, you're foolish.
Oh, okay. So
you would probably say that is a mug's game because that is not cool, clever, or hard. That's just stupid.
Yeah. Now, my favorite example, though, of Russian roulette, I don't know if it's Russian roulette, but I guess what you would call it mug's game is in Ted when they do the one with the knife where you like put it between your fingers, you know what I mean, really fast, Tim.
Yeah.
And then he accidentally stabs him in the hand, and the guy goes, "Why did you do this?" And then he yells back at him, "Why did you trust me? I'm on drugs."
Yeah. Well, I can tell you the film Ted, I've only seen the bits with Flash Gordon in it, Sam J. Jones.
Well, that was the party with Flash Gordon.
Yeah, I know. That's the bit I've seen.
I love that whole scene. I love the other part that I really think is funny in that scene is when he's singing, I don't know, something from the 90s. And it was like very 90s. And he was like, like everybody's semi-charmed life kind of thing. You could just sing the vowels to every song. And he just starts singing the vowels. That's like one of my favorite scenes, too. I love that part. All right. That had nothing to do with this poor man who died of Russian roulette. But anyway, so basically he was performing. It happened after a concert, too. He was 25 years old. He had been touring for a year. He'd been performing at the City Auditorium in Houston, Texas on Christmas Day. During a break between sets, so he wasn't even done. He was playing with a .32 caliber revolver, which we all do, right, Tim? Just between sets. And members of the band said he did this all the time, which I thought was very strange. And yeah, he was playing Russian roulette and supposedly he killed himself. Though the bass player says he witnessed it. He said, I'll tell you exactly what happened. Johnny Yates had been drinking. He had his little pistol. He was waving it around the table and said, someone be careful. And someone said, be careful with that thing. He's like, it's okay. The gun's not loaded. See, pointed at himself and bang.
Yeah, why are you using a loaded gun as effectively a fidget spinner? Like, I'm sitting here right now.
I know.
This is a thing for testing the earth in your house. I had to buy when I was checking my earth was correct in my house. I sometimes have this in my hand when we podcast. It's got a little
I do it too. Tim sees me pick up stuff.
Yeah, a little button on it. That's fine. I'm not handling firearms.
Well, I find it even stranger that, was it just a normal practice to be behind stage? And then apparently Big Mama Thornton was also performing with them. So she witnessed all this, which we've talked about Big Mama Thornton on here before. And she was the one who ran out screaming on the stage for someone to come help him. But the thing is, the audience was there too.
I've played music recently with musicians who bring firearms with them every time. And some of these places I've played in my past are dodgy.
Yeah.
But I'm not bringing weapons. But, I know various musicians who bring a gun with them. This is a thing. This is gigging life in the USA.
It's America. That doesn't surprise me, but they probably have that on their hook, put away safely or under clothing. It's not something they're just hanging out with behind stage between sets.
Yeah, it seems weird to be using it as some kind of fidget item.
Anyway, so there you go. That's what happened to him. There's not a whole lot of conspiracy around it besides it's just a weird story. Now, obviously, people witnessed it and say this is what happened and it was a normal thing for him to be doing. But I guess it was a different time, Tim.
Yeah, if I'm at a gig in between sets and we've got a dressing room, often I've got a guitar in my hand just warming up.
Fair enough. All right. So we have our last little segment, and then we will do a conclusion and see if me and Tim have solved any of the world problems, which I promise you we probably haven't. But these are interesting to talk about.
Okay.
So the next segment is Strange and Unexplained Death, which really is the same thing, but I just kind of grouped it together. Now, this one is one I know Tim will know. This is Brian Jones from the Rolling Stones, and the song I picked was Paint It Black.
Yes, so I believe wasn't he found in a swimming pool, drowned? Isn't that what?
He drowned in his own swimming pool in 1969.
Yeah, now he had already left the Rolling Stones. He was not an active member of the Rolling Stones when he died.
Now, the funny part you say that is that's part of the lore, Tim. Apparently they fired him.
Yeah, because he was completely unstable. He was doing drink and he was doing drugs and he had fathered many children. There was a lot of shenanigans around him. He was a very unstable individual and they didn't want any part of that. The Rolling Stones were on the up and up. And, that you can't, effectively a business, which is what a band is, you could tolerate some shenanigans that you wouldn't have in a regular job. But, for something that was growing like that, you just can't have that kind of wackiness going on.
So that's exactly what happened. And that is where some of the lore comes, because they said that he had been recently fired and made many suspect there was foul play. I don't know why there would be foul play on that, but that's just what they're saying. Now, Jones was discovered motionless at the bottom of his swimming pool at Potchford Farm. I don't know if I said that right. His Swedish girlfriend, Anna, was convinced that he was alive when he was taken out of the pool, insisting that he did have a pulse. However, by the time the doctors arrived, it was too late. He was dead on arrival, so on and so forth. The coroner's report, which I thought this was interesting, said it was a drowning, but later clarified the death as death by misadventure. Is that could you, I can't imagine that being like an official cause of death by misadventure.
Yeah, I've heard that before in UK coroner reports. I believe
That's
it means
strange to me.
Yeah, I believe it means that you're larking about basically, and you've done something ridiculous, and that's what it is.
I mean, that's fair. Now, they did note that some of the reason why he might not have survived is his heart and his liver were extremely enlarged and falling apart because of drugs, alcohol, and so on and so forth. So that could have been a contributing factor if you're trying to swim out of a pool. You might not be able to get to the top very well. Now, Pete Townsend famously did that poem, A Normal Day for Brian, a man who died every day. Jimi Hendrix dedicated a song to him, Jim Morrison. There's a lot of people who were dedicating things to him. Now, his girlfriend still stands on the side that she believes he was truly alive. I don't know. Now, there is a theory that he was murdered. With associates of the Stones claiming to have information that he was murdered. According to rock biographer Philip Norman, the murder theory would bubble back to the surface every 5 years or so. In 1993, it was reported that he was murdered by Frank Thorogood, a builder who was doing construction on his property, and he was the last person to see Jones alive.
Maybe he didn't pay him. Maybe he was a dodgy character. I don't know.
Well, here's where it gets weird. Thorogood allegedly confessed the murder to the Rolling Stones driver, Tom Keelock, but later denied this. I have no evidence to know if that's true.
That sounds like someone with a sick sense of humor who'd had too much to drink.
I mean, you probably are wrong. I can't say it, but that's just what they say. And then they did do, Sussex police decided to review the case. Nothing came of it, so on and so forth.
Yeah, probably will always be have a death by misadventure thing around it.
Exactly. Now, this is one that this is a band me and Tim have not hit on too much at all when we've recorded. We've talked about them mostly, almost humorously, I hate to say. That sounds bad. I don't mean post-humorously, I mean humorously. Just for clarification, Kristen Puff from Hole, the band Hole in the 90s. Now, a lot of people believe that Courtney Love might be involved in this. I can't say this. This is alleged. Please don't sue me, anyone. I'm saying this allegedly. But she overdosed in 1994. Now, the whole song I chose was Miss World. And the only reason I chose that one is because it was kind of about self-destruction. And most people believe she overdosed.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't think that was a good scene to be around. Sort of Kurt Cobain, Courtney Love, Hole. It wasn't a very healthy environment for the people who were involved at that time.
Yeah, so basically what happened with her was she was found dead in her Seattle apartment by Paul Erickson, just a friend. She was also 27 years old. Again, here we go, Tim. On the floor was, a lot of drug-related things. We don't need to get into the details. She died 2 months after Kurt Cobain, who was also, of course, Hole's front woman, Courtney Love's boyfriend, and now she has another person in her life passing away. Now that has to make for a very hard time, whether you like Courtney Love or not, for her. And I think that most of the suspicions is just because those two people passed away so close to each other.
Absolutely. I mean, Courtney Love is still a real person. I mean, she might be a celebrity with a celebrity husband, but she's still a real person with real feelings and real friends and family.
Yep. And so basically her father described her as bright, personable, and wonderful, very talented. And in the book Love and Death, which I guess is something, if you're interested in this, you could read, her mom Janet states she has never accepted the official report regarding her daughter. Janet has been interviewed by authors and many different people, and she still says that she thinks that she was murdered. So I think her mom is the one keeping this alive, for good or for worse. There you go, guys.
There we are.
I don't think I knew that, though. I knew the band Pole, but I'm not sure I've ever heard of her passing away, to be completely honest with you, Tim.
No, this is new information.
Now, this one is interesting, and I know this song, and I'll tell you why, because of Glee. But this is Chet Baker, and the song is My Funny Valentine. You've heard this song, Tim, correct?
Sure.
No? Okay. Perfect. So the reason this stands out, it's kind of like a jazz standard, but I always think of in Glee, there was a scene where there were two of the members of the band, or one of the members of Glee was not really a singer, and he openly was like talking about, I'm not a good singer, but he was a wonderful dancer. And that's why he was brought on Glee. And he did a little song and dance that was super cute and wonderful and funny, and they did a great job to My Funny Valentine. So that's why this stands out to me. Now, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, did you know he fell out of a window in Amsterdam?
No, I didn't know that.
That's so random. So, of course, the lore is, did he actually fall? Did he actually fall out the window? You know, but there's history that he was pushed. There was history that he jumped. But I just thought it was completely random that it was out of a window. Because, like, I mean, I've heard this song, but I don't know much more about him. I know he plays like the trumpet. But so around his death, now, obviously, once again, as Tim said, when you get in the music business, sometimes you do things that are not always great. And there was some drugs and alcohol abuse happening. But basically, on May 13th, 1989, Baker was found dead on the street below his hotel room in Hotel Prins Hendrik, Amsterdam. I probably did not say that right, but it's okay. With serious wounds. Of course, there were some paraphernalia found in his room. So obviously, the first thing was that maybe he had done that and it was acting a little crazy and fell out the window. But on another account, they said that he inadvertently locked himself out of his room and fell while attempting to cross the balcony to get back into his room. And then there's people who were there who said that they saw that. Some people said they didn't see it. Some people said that it was ruled an accident. Some people were trying to claim they watched him jump, and so on and so forth. So everybody who was kind of in that area, I guess, has their own version of what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it wasn't a basement apartment. I'm assuming it was a little bit up in the air if for that kind of problem to happen.
Second story window.
That'll do it.
Now, second story would be like third in America, right? Don't they do that a lot in Europe and like different countries?
Yeah, in the United States, the ground floor is the first floor, and then the next one up would be the second. The next one up would be third.
Yeah.
In the UK, you have the ground floor, and then the first one up is the first, and then the next one up is the second.
And it can be very confusing if you don't know that and you're trying to figure out where your hotel room is and everything's not in English.
Yeah, I was very confused with that when I first moved here because I was like, no, this is ground. I was like, no, this is first.
I mean, it makes sense. And I've heard, people say the ground floor in America, but to us, that's the first floor. So in actuality, I don't know if that was like an actual second story window or a third story window based off of this. So either way, I guess it really doesn't matter because... But yeah, so there you go, guys. Now, to be fair, his lifestyle was very tumultuous and he had a very big drug addiction. So
there we are. The second or first or third floor or whatever it was, and substance abuse sadly was his demise.
Yes. Now we are going to do one more, and then I'm going to puzzle Tim for a little. I don't know, just see what he thinks of all of this, which he's probably going to say, I have no idea, Joy. You just told me things I've never heard before 5 minutes ago, but we will put it out there for him. I just like doing stuff like this because it's a little bit different than our normal. Now, this artist is someone me and Tim would be familiar with. This is Harry Nilsson. I picked the song Without You because it's like one of the saddest songs ever written, period, I would say. I don't know if you're familiar with that song, Tim?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a classic.
It's beautiful. It's sorrowful. It's everything. Now, one thing is this was also covered by Badfinger. And I think Mariah Carey even did a version of it. So it's been covered by a few other artists. I loved Badfinger. I could do a whole episode on what happened to them. I don't know how much you're familiar with it, Tim, but that's like one of my big things that I've been down the rabbit hole on. Now, with that being said, Mr. Harry is very famous because he died in the same apartment as Mama Cass.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So some people believe that obviously that led to it being cursed and so on and so forth. There's a lot of conspiracy theories around what happened to him. Now, obviously, we did another episode where I went into this and we talked about Mama Cass and we determined the ham sandwich and all that stuff is all fake. So her death had a lot of stuff around it. So I think that was a contributing factor as to why his stood out to people. Now, for his death, I got to scroll down the page. Sorry, guys. So he was born with a congenital heart disease, heart disorder, whatever. And he suffered a heart attack. After surviving that, he pressured his former record label, RCA, to release a box set in retrospect of his career, and, started resuming recordings and was attempting to complete a final album, so on and so forth. He even finished the vocal tracks for the album, which was produced by Mark Hudson, which held on to the tapes of that session, and you can go listen to them on YouTube if you're interested. It was kind of cool. I went down that road earlier. But he did die of heart failure on January 15, 1944, in his California home, which just so happens to be the same home as Mama Cass.
There we are. A fabled rock and roll location, but sadly the demise of two classic artists.
I do think, though, when we did the Laurel Canyon episode, no, it's not a canon. Maybe it just so happens that there were so many people there in a small space that was bound for someone to pass away in someone else's house or something. I don't know.
I mean, I think so. I mean, there was very free with, various things. So I think it was inevitable it was going to happen.
Well, there you go. And there was no ham sandwich in his story. I couldn't find that. I mean, it's pretty obvious he had something wrong with him with his heart, and that's why he died. Now, obviously, what people are trying to say about him is that he was poisoned or something that led to the heart, and that there's a curse over the house. But I could find no official evidence of that in any way. Another song that I liked from him, he did a cover of One by Three Dog Night. I really liked his version of it, and I like Three Dog Night's version. And I don't know if you ever heard this, Tim, but he's sometimes referred to as the American Beatle. Because when the Beatles were asked who their favorite musician was in America, a lot of times he would be the answer. They said music.
Interesting.
I learned that. And he had formed close relationships with John Lennon, Ringo Starr, so on and so forth. Obviously, he also was a member. Have you ever heard of I didn't know this. John Lennon was also a member of something called the Hollywood Vampires.
Well, the band that Hollywood Vampires still exists. It has Alice Cooper in it, and it has Johnny Depp in it.
Yeah, but I didn't know they were members of it at some point.
Yeah, maybe it's just like one of these super groups that's gone on and on and on. I didn't realize he was a member of that.
I didn't either, but according to the thing that rhymes with encyclopedia, he was.
Oh, well, there we are.
Alice Cooper said he was. Keith Moon said he was. Ringo Starr said he was. And then Harry Nilsson also was. They're saying they were the principal members, whatever that means. Additional members are Bernie Taupin, Mal Evans, I don't know who that is. Tim might know. Jack Cruz, Keith Emerson, Keith Allison, I don't know. But I know what that is. And I know that it was like a drinking club at one point, kind of like a speakeasy. And then, like Tim said, they put out music. And then they also fraternized with Brian Wilson from the Beatles, no Joy from the Beach Boys, and Iggy Pop. Yeah, Brian Wilson is now an official member of the Beatles, according to this podcast, Tim.
I mean, we're mixing it up, Joy. It's what do the kids call it? A mashup.
Now, what's interesting that you say that, Tim, one thing that I was reading is while they didn't put out music whenever these people like Alice Cooper and Keith Moon and stuff were doing this, it was more of just like a drinking thing than the super group is named after them. So maybe that's why we didn't know this. Apparently, it was just an excuse for them to drink a lot of alcohol and hang out. That's what I'm gathering. So that's the Hollywood vampire story. And yeah, so I will leave it at that. My question for Tim, though, is of everything on this list, because I know we covered some of these. We've talked about a few of these artists, but most of this was pretty new. Was there anything on here that surprised you the most?
I mean, some of the stuff that you mentioned, especially like Robert Johnson, I was very familiar with that. And the chat from the Manic Street Preachers. There was some of the ones on here which I hadn't heard of before. So it was interesting to hear those stories.
I think the one for me that stood out, well, the two ones that I found the most interesting were the Jim Sullivan, but the UFO thing and the New Mexico connection. And then also the guy who vanished over the English Channel. I feel like I've never heard that.
Yeah, I didn't. I should have mentioned that. I was not aware that's what happened to Glenn Miller. I mean, I never really thought about what happened to Glenn Miller. I
Me
just
either.
assumed he lived a long and happy life, and we lost him when he was very much older. I didn't realize there was some kind of aeroplane over the English Channel, which is a small body of water. As I said, it's probably 35 miles if it's that.
Exactly. Now, if you guys have any theories, you now know about where all of our social medias are. Please tell us. If me and Tim have missed a big piece of history about this guy disappearing over the English Channel and everybody else knows it, also tell us that. You can subscribe, follow, share this if you know anybody who likes music and mystery. And yeah, was there anything else you'd like to leave the people with?
Just two things. One, email the show, no name musiccast@gmail.com. And as ever, be kind to everybody that you meet.
I have one thing I want to say. If you do email us and you have Tim's recycling bin, please send us pictures of it, like doing fun stuff. I still want to see somebody who has this, who took it and they're like the Eiffel Tower. So they're just taking Tim's recycling bin around with them. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.